Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ, a pod divided, the college football show each and every week on this very program, twice a week, because we love talking college football all the time on this very show. Down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. This is the first pod divided of the new year. So happy New Year to you and yours up there in Knoxville.
Hey, Everything School HQ. I don't know if you saw basketball program in the top 5, the AP top 5 this week. Tennessee right up there in the top 10 for national championship odds going into next year in the football season. Baseball, we're like 34 days away, and they're a top 5 team once again. So it's just I'm just tired of winning, you know? I'm tired of winning a lot and being good at a lot of stuff, Matt Green. You're in hibernation mode. It's officially just dog hibernation season, where we'll see y'all again in July and August. But for the next few months, it's Georgia fans will be neither seen nor heard. The Milford Men of college sports. Georgia Bulldogs fans.
Great reference, but yeah, whatever helps you be more satisfied with those 8-9 win football seasons, you know, that's fine. We all know the SEC football, it just means more down here. So, you know, enjoy the spring sports. Let's not act like Georgia's not good in other sports. All right, they're not good in baseball and basketball. Like the next two really good, but it's like women's sports, they're good. They're good in all kinds of softball and all kinds of other things, swimming, dancing, gymnastics and everything. So put some respect. Tennis, put some respect on UGA athletic program.
Hey, I'm just saying the big three that you and I spend a lot of time watching, although you're not a big baseball guy, and I understand because you're a big Braves guy. It's hard to do both. I can't
keep up with college basketball as much as I used to either. I'm almost just a college football, MLB, and like casual NFL fan. Like, I mean, I'm like a casual NBA fan too, I guess. But it's just easier to keep up with the NBA than at least I know the players. College basketball, with all the one and dones, it's like you got to be locked in to keep up with college basketball.
Hey. Do what you got to do, sir. Not everyone can be sports renaissance men who keep up with everything.
That's true. I can't be like you. One day, I'm hoping I can be like you.
I don't think you want to do that. I don't think there's any part of Matt Green that's like, I want to know a little bit about a lot of stuff. I think you're good being the college football expert and living in Braves country and doing fantasy baseball. Like you got your niche, man. I don't think you're diving out. I don't think you're doing that. Well, don't forget, folks, we do this show twice a week here on the Chase Thomas podcast, every Sunday night and Wednesday night, talking all things college football. If you enjoy this very show, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if that is indeed how you're watching. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, we appreciate it. Growing more and more each day, 1.6 thousand subs, doing really well, full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff. So if you're watching us there, we appreciate it. Make sure you drop a comment or like and subscribe if you have not already done so and you like all of these episodes each and every day here on this feed. Check out the homepage, all kinds of great content and links and more information about this very show, chasethomaspodcast.com. And you can always email us and get in touch with us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. If you have any college football questions for Matt or myself, you can do so there. Check out the newsletter, sportsrenaissanceman.substack.com, that grows more and more and does really good traffic each and every day on the Substack. So if you want to get early access to what we're doing each and every day on this program, sportsrenaissanceman.substack.com. Matt Green, it's Nico week here on the program.
Is that what week it is?
It's Nico Iamaleava. Do you have it down, sir?
Yeah, I think I do. Iamaleava.
That's right.
Iamaleava. Okay.
Yeah.
It didn't take me too long to learn Uyunglele, and so you know
that's tougher.
His name is pretty phonetic, phonetically spelled.
Well, I'm going to get into mine, but obviously I watched a exorbitant amount of college football on Monday between Tennessee, then immediately to Texas,
triple
Washington.
header.
I basically had a triple header, and it was a lot. It was a fun time because all three games were fun. I understand if you're not a Tennessee fan, then you probably didn't love Tennessee, Iowa, but it was a lot of fun
And
for myself.
Wisconsin was fun too. There's a nice little college football Monday, I should say.
Yeah, it felt like a Saturday in a lot of ways. Just how
that's what I was thinking. Frank the Tank got a nice little Saturday plan.
I didn't hit up Home Depot. I did not have time.
Not enough time.
No, not enough time, Matt Green. But it was enough time for Nico Iamaleava to put on a show for the Tennessee Volunteers in a 35-0 victory over Iowa in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. But before I give my take on what I saw from Nico and Tennessee as they go away for the next 9 months, which is quite sad, Matt Green, what did you see from Nico and Tennessee in their debut of the 5-star number 1 overall prospect of the 2023 cycle? 2022, excuse me.
I mean, I think he definitely showed some of those flashes why this guy's a 5-star, but he's got all the tools. It's just hard to know what to take away from some of these bowl games. Like since you're looking at a guy, this is like almost a spring game for him. Iowa's got a good defense, so it's like it's a worthwhile exhibition, if you will. So he looked good. Joe Milton looked good versus Clemson in the bowl game last year, right? So there's reason for optimism on Rocky Top next year, but it's I don't know. For me, it's hard to know exactly what to take from some of these games. With Iowa, I mean, this team just, I don't know, they're setting records out here for lack of offense.
Hey, look. It's one of those things too. It was like a lose-lose where it's like if Nico struggles, you're like, oh, it's panic, but it's also like, hey, this defense is one of the better defenses in college football, and for the most part, he shredded them. Tennessee didn't take any deep shots in this game. I think they had one total deep shot all day. The tackles were terrible for Tennessee. Dane Davis got obliterated in the right-hand side. So Nico actually took 6 sacks in this one, and if Joe was behind center, they may have taken 12 overall, but Nico, the thing that stood out to me with him is he is so good at doing things when things break down, because you just have a full year of Joe just being stuck in the pocket and just sitting there and just waiting on guys to get open, and guys weren't getting open and taking bad sacks, and just it was a very robotic offense. Like it was a very robotic passing game all year long, and they didn't trust Joe to do a lot of stuff, and he didn't do a lot of improv. He wasn't a natural runner. He didn't want to run. You just didn't see it enough, and Tennessee was really missing that, because part of what made Hendon Hooker so dominant 2 years ago was that defenses just they were just frustrated because they were like, is he running? Because he was such a natural runner, and he was so good with deep shots. He was so good in the intermediate. Like, you just didn't really know how to defend Hooker because he had so many different ways he could beat you, and he was so comfortable in the hype offense. I think you just have to have that. You have to be a runner in this offense for it to really glide and be a top 10 offense. And I think the biggest thing that we saw from Nico, because the receiver play still wasn't great in this one, was that Nico, he ran in multiple scores, but he was so good at making something out of nothing, getting first downs on 3rd and 7 and scampering out when the offensive line was getting beat off the line of scrimmage. Like, Nico's improvisation, I think, was huge. His pocket feel was on full display, where I made jokes in this program where it's like he's big Bryce Young, but a lot of the stuff he was doing was just a lot of Bryce Young stuff, where he's just so natural in the pocket at moving around and avoiding pressure and knowing where to be and throwing off platform, that we'll see what happens for a full season. But I think that along with the fact that he doesn't make mistakes, like he wasn't putting the ball in harm's way, he wasn't inaccurate with the football, like he runs with a purpose. He doesn't run in a way where you're like, ooh, he's might have a fumbling problem. No, I mean, he just doesn't, he's not going to throw a lot of picks. He's a very efficient guy. The sky's the limit, man. Like he's going to be a really good player. And as Graham Coffey, friend of the pod, was like, he's got some juice to him. And I think the main thing you saw is like, he's going to be a good player. Like, do I think he'll win a Heisman or anything like that? Well, that remains to be seen. But the main thing is Tennessee, I think, next year will be back to a fun, very dangerous top 10 scoring offense again, because he's going to kill teams with his feet and through the air. And when Tennessee and Josh Heupel has a quarterback who can beat you in multiple ways like that again, I think we're going to see something closer to what we saw 2 years ago with Hendon Hooker.
And if that's the case, like I definitely agree with a lot of the points you're making. And if that's the case, like as a Tennessee fan, like aren't you kind of scratching your head of like why we didn't get a realistic shot at Nico early in the season? Like, I mean, after you lose to Florida early on, it's like, okay, let's start to play two quarterbacks here. Let's have some series set up for Nico playing like real snaps, like you saw like a Deshaun Watson or something as a freshman, like a Jacob Eason or something as a freshman, of like, okay, this guy's got experience, but let's see what this stud 5-star freshman is going to do, you know? So that's the one thing that's like, if you're this sold, not like talking shit about you or anything, but like if you're this sold after one full start against Iowa, like what would you have thought if he put together 2 or 3 series against Alabama, you know, like earlier in the season? Like I think with how just underwhelming Joe Milton was for so much of the season, like I'm just surprised that Nico never got a realistic look playing like meaningful snaps during the regular season.
Well, I think part of it was just that like something tells me that Heupel knew early on this was going to be kind of a lost season, where like the receivers weren't as good as what we saw a year ago.
More so, like what? If it's a lost season, like let's have this dude a whole season under his belt going into 2024.
Maybe, but I also think, I mean, the locker room aspect to it was Joe was very likable. He was a friend to everyone else. He was the guy who Hendon Hooker passed the torch to. I just think probably a lot of it was locker room dynamics. Joe's a great teammate. Nico and Joe are cool. I think there's just something about this year where if you all see it's a gap year, and my gut is if you gave true serum to all the Tennessee coaches of like before the year, how did you think this team was going to be compared to what you saw in 2022? I would venture to say most would say we're hoping to get to 9-3, but anything more would be pretty surprising.
I mean, in terms of are we expecting to repeat what we did in 2022? Like they would probably, most wouldn't expect that, but it's definitely not a lost year. Like we talked about all the seniors they had on defense, like they had a significantly improved defense from a year ago this year. And it's like, so if you actually continue to be Josh Heupel on offense, like have the typical Josh Heupel offense, like this team could have been the best in the SEC East or something. You know, they could have potentially gotten to Atlanta. So I don't know. I think it becomes a lost season because you're probably thinking Joe Milton has the highest floor as a 5th, 6th year senior, whatever he was, and you have so much experience on this team. He probably gives you the best chance to win now. But I don't know. I as someone who lived through like the Jake Fromm and Justin Fields like conversation, like Jake Fromm was actually really good, and there was a huge conversation about playing the 5-star new shiny toy. So to get underwhelming quarterback play and not ever see that 5-star freshman is just a little surprising to me.
But it is what it is. It's fine. We're turning the page. You're still going to get 2 years of Nico, like in full years. And you go into next year in 2025 is like, hey, we're in the game now. I think next year, I was talking to a buddy about it today, was that I think Tennessee's game plan should be, look, I mean, Ole Miss, they're higher odds in the it's wild to see how high Ole Miss's title odds are nationally going into next year, because this is uncharted waters. And this
favorable schedule, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Is Alabama not on their schedule next year? I know they do play Georgia.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. But if they do get Bama, guess what? They're going to get them at home. Like, that's a home game for Ole Miss. So, and they played them close at home 2 years ago. Final drive, they had the ball to win, and they didn't convert. Jackson Dart missed over the top and stuff. But no, I mean, I just think you look at next year for Tennessee, the goal should be make the playoff. That's the goal. And then 2025, year 2 of Nico. I think Mike Matthews, Brandon Staley, some of these young guys are going to be sophomores. They're going to have bigger roles. And I think you look at 2025 as like, you need to be in position to be able to win a title. Like, you need to be in the top 7 title odds going into 2025. And 2024, just make the playoff, aim for that and see what happens. 2025, the expectations are everything. Like that's year 5. That's a big tipping point. It's a lot of talent that should be a little bit more seasoned. You should have the most amount of depth you've had in a while. Year 2 of a Heisman type quarterback. Like that the pressure's on is the way I'm looking at the next 2 years.
I think you're onto something there. And also, speaking of Ole Miss's schedule, like man, the SEC is about to be a lot of fun, man. Like because we're talking about them having a weak schedule. Like they're probably sleepwalking to 6-0. No offense to Kentucky and South Carolina, but they're probably going 6-0. But we're talking about them having a weak schedule. Then they got LSU, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, and Florida. Like SEC, there's not going to be many weak schedules. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so, sir. Matt Green, the Georgia Bulldogs, though. You get Humphrey back in this one this week, so that and there's the portal comes back, the 5-star kid. Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers officially off to the NFL. But before I pick your brain about that, Matt Green, the Dogs, they destroy Florida State. It was not close. It was never close. It was tough for the Orange Bowl onlookers who made the trip. I feel bad for the Florida State fans who made the trip down, or even Georgia fans who paid a lot of money potentially for that trip to go see the Dogs.
I'm sure Georgia fans still had a lot of fun watching a 60-point win.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe. I just look at it as like when there's so many dudes out. That's what I want to ask you, because I saw some culture stuff about this after, and a lot of people were ripping Florida State, and a lot of people were saying, like, there was a lot of divisive comments from both sides of the aisle here. Where do you fall, Matt Green, on what happened between Georgia and Florida State in Miami?
So you want me to get into the culture things, or are we talking about the actual game?
The culture thing, and then let's get into the actual game.
In terms of that, so I think two things can be true. And so I like to compare this to kind of like how we talk about professional athletes. Like so that we there's people who criticize Michael Jordan, because he wasn't like an activist for his community and stuff like that. But you hype up like a Bill Russell, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like he was an activist, he did whatever, right? Stood up for causes and stuff. But you can elevate one guy for doing that, but you don't have to downgrade another guy for not doing that, right? Like this guy's extraordinary because along with being a professional athlete and everything, he also thinks whatever is important. So you can hype up Georgia's culture because I think it's right to. Like they have, Bullard went pro, Tyke Smith went pro, Kamari Laster went pro. Several guys that, the draft, I guess McConkey, technically, he left early too, right? So a lot of guys that could have just sat out and been their final game did play for Georgia. Amarius Mims and Bowers, they battled injuries. So they did opt out, quote unquote, for this game. But, they kind of battled injuries throughout the season. So I think it does say something about Georgia's culture that so many guys wanted to finish the season and make a statement and everything. But I don't think we have to downgrade Florida State's culture because they didn't. I think this is the natural, college football like world that we've kind of created, that these bowl games don't really matter. Like Florida State, you could say maybe there's like an extra saltiness about not being in the playoff. I'm sure more than that. It's like, let's be honest, like Florida State was kind of built on like a rent-a-player like philosophy, a lot of transfers that like maybe Florida State wasn't their favorite school coming out of high school, but this is where they ended up. This is where they had the best opportunity to play. And now it's gotten me to where I want to be. I'm in a position to go pro. Fuck this bowl game. I don't need this bowl game. So, it's like a hired gun, a mercenary, like they got you where you want. And it's unfortunate because I think Florida State, I still have, like, even though they lost by 60 points, I still have the belief that they should have made the college football playoff based on what they did through 13 games. But I don't think just because Georgia, I think this kind of, I don't know if this proves Georgia has the best culture in college football, but I think it proves that, they're kind of built different. But that doesn't mean that because of Florida State has these guys opting out, they're somehow have this poor culture.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also, I think what this showed more than anything is Georgia's ahead of Florida State in the depth department. Florida State's recruiting really well the last couple cycles under Mike Norvell. I think Mike Norvell's the guy. He's had a great year. Like, he has turned Florida State. They're back into a juggernaut in college football. But they don't have, we talked about at the beginning of the year where it was like they were very top heavy. You had Verse, you had Keon Coleman, you had Trey Benson, you had Jordan Travis. Like, you had a lot of dudes at the top, and it was like, hey, if they're healthy, they're going to be really hard to beat. Like, this is going to be a dominant football team. But not like they had dudes after dudes. They didn't have the Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, guys like that yet. Now, I think they're going to be there sooner rather than later, but that's a whole heck of a lot of production, and so much of their identity was wrapped up in those guys that when you lose all of them, there's just a bunch of inexperience, a bunch of guys who didn't know what they were doing, and it was just a lot of limited talent out there. Now, do I think the score will be the same in 2 years? I don't think so, but I think Georgia is so deep, so if they lose at Brock Bowers to this game, they just have bodies. Like, Georgia is the deepest, I think right now, the deepest program in college football. So I think Georgia can withstand opt-outs better than I think any program in the country. I don't know if you agree, but I would say they can withstand it better than anybody.
I think that's true, but it's not like these two teams had anywhere close to the same number of opt-outs. Like, I saw a graphic that was like said that they both had like 27 players based on like the portal, and it's like Georgia had a bunch of third, fourth stringers, like dudes that weren't playing that were transferring. Like, this was basically Georgia's first string. Like, Bowers may have been out and Amarius Mims may have been out, but like, this was Georgia at full strength, just about, playing against Florida State's entire second, third string with like a fourth string quarterback. So it's like, it's not even fair. Like, I hate hearing people that are like, yeah, but if you were anywhere close to Georgia, like you wouldn't have lost by 60. Like, you could at least like lose by like 30 or something. It's like, we had our third, fourth string quarterback. It's like, Georgia is possibly the best team in the country. Like, Georgia potentially could have beaten Florida State handedly with their starters. Like, we don't know, but without everybody, every key player, it's not like it's just a few guys here. Like, I almost felt bad for Florida State fans watching, because I just knew the narrative coming out of this game was going to be like, oh, clearly they didn't deserve to be in the playoff. Like, if they were good at all, they could have put up a fighting. It's like they gave Georgia like a tough like first drive, right? Like, I think Georgia turned it over on downs on the first drive of the game, and then proceeded to have 9 straight touchdown drives. And it was like, okay, it's getting a little out of hand.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's a bowl game, and I think Georgia fans, I think a lot of people, it's not even just Georgia fans, I don't want to pick on them. I think it's just more of, I think college football fans need to recalibrate how they view non-playoff bowl games. And I mean, when we go to the 12-team playoff next year, I think it's going to be even worse, but like, it's an exhibition. And the difference here with like Florida State going undefeated and then Mike Norvell having to get his guys up, being the first undefeated Power 5 team to be left out of the college football playoff, to get them up for Georgia, like, that's never going to be easy. And it's just, you really have nothing to play for in that regard, where it's like, I could not imagine how deflating that had to be for all those dudes who did everything. They didn't lose a game, and then this is still an exhibition game. Like, no matter how you shake it, it is an exhibition game and not a playoff game. And we have no idea how this game would have gone if they were all at full strength. I mean, you know what would have been fun? Georgia and Florida State at full strength. Like, that would have been a lot of fun. I think it would have been a close game, and we could actually have some narrative conversations. Maybe it's not a close game. Maybe Georgia still beats them handedly at full strength. And then we can talk about that.
First round game if Georgia would have beaten Alabama. I'm not sure if
that's true.
Texas still jumps them or what, but yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. I don't know if I'm with Kirby, like, if it's an indictment on the entire bowl like landscape. Like, not every game had like this many opt-outs. Yeah. But I mean, and at the same time, like you're saying with the 12-team playoff, like, I think it's not going to be an issue anymore, because those are all the only teams we want to see play anyway. Like, in terms of like the big games, you're tired of watching number 5 and number 6 play, and it's not a big game, you know? So you're going to see all those top 12 teams, like, they're going to have their rosters. Like, obviously there's a whole nother thing with who knows how many guys that are in the playoffs transfer and don't actually play for their teams in the playoff. Like, that's going to be a whole nother thing. But
I'm
But
not as
yeah,
worried about that.
In terms of opt-outs, like I don't think we're all gonna care if that much because some starters are sitting out of the Holiday Bowl, or the Cheez-It Bowl or something like that, like between a couple of teams ranked in the 20s.
I just am not as worried about that. People are doomsdaying that. Players really want to play for things that matter. Like, players want to play for a title. I think the vast majority NFL teams are not going to like that.
Though, man.
No, I don't disagree, but I'm saying starters and a lot of the main guys, they're not opting out. So people are like the quarterback. You're going to see a big time quarterback opt out. And I'm like, I don't think you are. I don't think that's how this is going to go. And I also think if we go down that road, guess what? NIL is going to put in some guidelines, and there's going to be some contract stuff where it's like, hey, if you play an X amount, like this is part of the deal. To get X amount of money, you cannot opt out in the bowl games or playoff games. Like, they're going to figure that out. I'm not as worried about that as other people are.
Prorated NIL stuff.
Yeah, like I'm not worried about that. Like, there's a lot to be worried about with college football going forward. Losing star quarterbacks in the college football playoff and a 12-team playoff is not one of the things I'm worried about at the moment. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
I don't know. We'll see, man.
I hope not. Maybe I'm just rose-colored glasses and that sort of thing. Matt Green, speaking of Florida State, your immediate reaction to DJU, because my cousin Sam, shout out to cousin Sam in here on this very show. You've met cousin Sam.
Of course.
Big Florida State fan, obviously. I had to rain on his parade a little bit, where I saw DJU commits to transfer to Florida State. Cam Ward commits to the NFL in a 7-second hilarious just I'm going to the NFL bye video that was fantastic because players don't do that anymore. Everything is so over the top, and Haynes Fawcett does design stuff.
Like the old school high school basketball recruiting where it's like this guy's down in Kentucky, North Carolina, and he might go to the NBA.
Yeah. And we respect it. So shout out to Cam Ward. Good luck to him at the NFL level. He was fun to watch in college. But my immediate reaction was like, oh, Florida State's going to be next year because you're losing Keon Coleman, losing Wilson, losing Benson. And DJU, you and I talked about it. He wasn't good. It wasn't like he got significantly better going to Oregon State. The team was just better. They asked him to do less. He was still completing like 50% of his passes. We watched the games. Oregon State just ran the ball really well. They didn't ask DJ to do a whole lot. I don't think this is a great fit. I'm not sure you could sell me on Brock Glenn with a full offseason as QB1 that he can't be better. Are you sure you can't do something better in the portal? Was Will Howard not willing? Like, Caden Salter is now out there.
Will Howard's looking at like Ohio State these days.
Right. So but I'm just saying, like, if you're Florida State, I didn't understand like the reaction from a lot of folks who are like, they get their bridge. And that was my cousin Sam. I didn't want to ran his bridge because he's like, bridge guy will be fine. ACC 10-2, 11-1. I'm like, I don't know.
Is this is their Phillip Rivers to the Colts?
I just don't think it's gonna go like that. Do you agree, Macri? I don't think it's gonna be great. I think this is gonna be very frustrating for a lot of Florida State fans next year.
I'm not. I mean, I guess he gives you a higher floor, in terms of not knowing. Because I'm definitely. I don't even Brock Glenn. I'm not. It's hard to know. It's hard to know after watching him play against Georgia what exactly he has, but made a couple nice deep throws, but I don't know. DJU, I don't think this Florida State roster is in a position where it's like, let's get a guy that can like manage the game. That's just like a solid, he can make some plays here and there. Like, I think they kind of need a difference maker at quarterback. Like Jordan Travis was like low key, like most of their offense. Like they had obviously a good running game this year, but
but he was in the Heisman conversation.
Ran around, made plays. Yeah, it's like he kind of
DJU's not going to be in the Heisman conversation next year.
And I don't know. He has games where he's like a workhorse back, and he's just like getting tough yards. But then you have other games, and I don't know. He just seems like he doesn't want to get hit. So I don't know. DJU, it's hard to be too high on that, but I mean, I guess. I don't know. That's why I think Florida State fans are so frustrated, because Georgia fans, you might see the articles. It's like, oh, Georgia would be favored against all these playoff teams on a neutral field or something. But we're like, we didn't do it this year. Florida State fans are like, this was it. This was the perfect storm. Everything came together for us to go undefeated this year, and now it's all going to fall apart next year. And like, there's no chance this team is undefeated type college. Like, well, I mean, they might be college football playoff contender because they might have a couple losses and still be able to get in a 12-team playoff. But I think this really felt like their shot this year. And DJU, I don't know. It feels like that just feels like an 8-4, 9-4 type of season.
Yeah, and I just, after the kind of year you just had, and then to get left out, and then the first year of the 12-team playoff, you're looking at like an 8-4, 9-3 type. I don't know. I just would be very disappointed if I'm a Florida State fan, because I think you could have done better. And I think Cam Ward would have been huge for them. And it's just kind of a bummer. I'd be like, man, we could have kept this thing rolling, because you got a very talented Kremenchuk, I think is his name, Luke Kremenchuk. He's in the top 10 of this class of quarterbacks. So you can let him sit for a year. If you have Cam Ward, you feel good, then you just plug and play with him, and you just keep this thing humming. I don't think this thing's going to be humming next year. My gut tells me it's going to be a frustrating year in Tallahassee. But we shall see. We shall see, Matt Green. What was not frustrating, sir, was the college football playoff semifinals. So my first question to you, was that the best semis ever as we put a bow on the 4-team playoff era a decade later, sir?
I think it was 2 amazing games, but I got to go with the 2022 playoff. I think that one was still better. Just Georgia, Ohio State came down to the wire, and TCU, Michigan was a track meet. Like, I'll still go that one. Maybe I'm biased with the Georgia New Year's celebration as the clock struck midnight. But yeah, 2 ridiculous games came down to the final play. It's almost... Hear me out here. It's almost as if we all overreacted to the same couple teams being good for a while, and this 4-team playoff is actually a good idea. I don't know. That's just me. I'm a big 4-team playoff guy. So I thought, when we saw Alabama dominating people, we're like, oh, we're getting these terrible playoff games. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean that the system is messed up. So it was an awesome game. I feel like me and you were probably over here breathing a sigh of relief when we saw Alabama lose this game and Nick Saban finally go 3 years without winning a national championship at Alabama for the first time.
Well, some people are saying he hasn't won one in 6 now, because they're not counting the COVID year. They're saying he hasn't won a non-COVID title since 2017. I'll give you an asterisk on the Dodgers or the Lakers, like those weird season, the bubble and stuff. But college football wasn't even that different. They played an all SEC schedule. That's what I push back against, where I'm like, that was actually harder. You could actually make the case. I understand like the environments weren't as strong, but like to go undefeated and to run the gauntlet in the SEC with the offense and dominance that Alabama had, they don't get an asterisk. That counts, folks. But also the bubble, like I could go on a whole rant about that. I'm like, that you could make the case that was harder because you're away from family. You're in this just away in this literal bubble away from everybody, and you're doing these games like it's an AAU tournament over and over again. And I don't know. I think it was hard mentally. I think that was a really hard thing to do.
A lot of people do talk about like maybe the best basketball was being played just because those dudes were so focused and everything like that.
It was fun.
But yeah,
I push back on the COVID championships. Don't put an asterisk by them.
Yeah, I'm not really going off on that. I'm not dying on that hill. And it's really the LeBron haters out there that want to put an asterisk on the Lakers bubble title. But how do we get off on that tangent?
We were talking about the best ever.
But talking about Alabama, and now it's one championship in the last 6 years for Saban. But so ultimately we were wrong about, what this team was capable of accomplishing with Jalen Milroe.
Hold on. We.
I mean, you were predicting them to go 8-4 and Saban to retire.
I'm saying they were closer to 8-4 than they were a national title contender, and I'm standing by that.
How can you possibly stand by that? They went 11-1, won the SEC. I mean,
Tennessee was up 20-7 at the half, on the road in Tuscaloosa.
Okay,
this is a team that was on the ropes with USF, Matt Green. This is a team that barely beat Arkansas. This is a team that barely beat Texas A&M. This is a team that needed a prayer to beat Auburn, a bad Auburn team, and Jordan Hare. This is an 8-4, closer to an 8-4 Iowa-ass team than they were a national title team, Matt Green. I will die on that hill.
No, and so if you would have let me finish, sir, down there, I feel like our assessment of this team was still was still accurate, because I feel like they were flawed. But you look at the SEC West and their opponents this year, there were not a lot of just really good defenses, to expose Jalen Milroe. And I think at the end of the day, like I obviously as a Georgia fan watching this game, I'm like, how did this Alabama team beat Georgia? It felt like this felt more like the team we saw Alabama play most weeks. The one, like you're saying, that barely beat Arkansas, the one that needed a prayer to beat Auburn. Like it felt more like, yeah, Milroe's good. This team is good. This defense is really good. One of the best in the country. But they're just something they were missing offensively. And even with all that, you're talking about they're close to 8-4. They went to overtime in a college football playoff game. They were winning in the final minutes. Michigan had to put together the 80-yard drive to tie the game with a minute left. So, like, with all their flaws, this Alabama team still damn near won a national championship with Jalen Milroe at quarterback. And he finished 6th in the Heisman voting, right? Like, I wonder, is he definitely Alabama's quarterback next year? Like, is Nick Saban looking to upgrade the quarterback position? Because there's like such a feel-good narrative around him about how he like got so much better throughout the season, which I think he did, but I think it's still a little overblown. I think it was,
I agree.
You know what I mean? So
if they lose to Auburn, no one's talking about him like this.
Yeah, without a doubt. And he's a good player, and he's an amazing athlete. But I think the main difference with Michigan and Georgia is that Michigan, this team is built more like the 2021 Georgia team. Like defensively, I think that's where you could see the difference between just like I'm saying, watching it from a Georgia fan's perspective, because Georgia made some mistakes offensively in that game that kind of, shot themselves in the foot. But they weren't stopping. They weren't getting the pressure. I mean, they did get some pressure on Milroe, but they weren't getting the pressure consistently like Michigan was. And they weren't just shutting down Michigan. And Alabama did have some success running the ball. But I think that's the main difference I saw watching this game is Michigan just has more dudes on the defensive line than Georgia.
No, I don't disagree, sir. But, hey, let's talk about Michigan, Alabama first. And what we saw here. I predicted both correct going into this weekend. Matt Green, I don't know if you saw, but it was a great year for myself on the pick'em. And I finished on a high note here with Michigan and Washington both getting dubs. The group chat gave me the Thomas family group chat was all over me because I said in the morning, I'm like, yeah, no, it's going to be Michigan and Washington. And they were all Alabama, Texas. Everyone was all Alabama, Texas. That's what we're getting. And I was like, you know what I'm doing? I'm sticking to what I've seen all year long, which is Bama is incredibly flawed and Texas beat up and Washington has been the best offense and has the best quarterback in the playoff. Like I just couldn't shake it where I'm like, they do this. Washington never been down 8+ points all year long. People doubted them against Oregon twice. And I think Texas was built in a similar way to Oregon. And they just were like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and take care of that. And it got a little crazy. We'll talk about that in a second. But I just looked at this Bama team. It was just like it's really hard because Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. It's really hard to just accept when things have changed, right? What we just did is we gave Clemson the last 2 years, Matt Green, the benefit of the doubt. Because we're like, we've seen Dabo build a dynasty at Clemson. We've seen Clemson beat Alabama multiple times. We've seen them win a national title with a true freshman quarterback. We've seen Clemson just keep this thing humming and be a real national title contender over and over again. So that when they start fumbling and they start not falling off a cliff, but going more towards that 10-2 route where there's just clear problems, but you're like, they're Clemson, and I've seen them win a lot of big games. I've seen them do stuff that it's really hard to let that go and just be like, they're just not that anymore. They're just like another good team. They're closer to Penn State than they are the Georgias of the last 2 years. And I think it's really hard for us as analysts and fans to look at this.
You're saying Alabama's closer to Penn State?
I'm saying this year, yes. Like I'm saying that they were I think that's a close game this year. I think those two teams were closer than like the Georgias of the last 2 years. I don't think there's one true.
State Michigan game went like they were down like a touchdown in like the third quarter. You're like, no, but this lead's insurmountable. Penn State, they can't do anything. They couldn't score at all.
I mean, you look at Bama. What did they do in the second half? They took the ball out of Jalen Milroe's hands. Like he was not throwing the football. They were like, we're running QB counter. We're running the football a bunch with him. We are power, and they ran the ball well. Bama ran the ball well against Michigan, but all that to say, Matt Green, I just didn't feel like this is the Alabama of old. And people just kept saying after they beat Georgia, it was the Alabama of old. But I'm like, I don't know. I think if you play Bama, Georgia 100 times in the bins, I think Georgia wins that game probably 90 out of 100 times. Like, I didn't come away going, Bama's back. I came away, Georgia had a bad day, had some injuries in the line. Ladd McConkey wasn't 100%. You had, obviously, the missed call and the catch, and who knows how different the game is there. But, like, I didn't come away going, wow, outclassed. It's just Bama won in the trenches that day. You know who didn't win in the trenches? Bama against Michigan. So you saw that it could have gone the other way, and maybe that it doesn't happen again that way. Michigan is the best team in the trenches in the college football playoff. We saw that very evident on Monday afternoon.
Well, and that's why I think this was such a great season, because I think they just found ways to win games. And I'm not into all the composite rankings saying this is the most talented team in college football based on recruiting rankings. Like, this was not the most talented team in college football, but they found ways to win most games, and they almost found a way to win this one. And
it's almost a testament to Nick Saban, because this was an incredibly flawed team that he dragged to the college football playoff. And they just didn't have dudes. Like, Burton obviously didn't step up in this game. No Isaiah Bond. Malik Benson, big JUCO transfer. He's now in the portal again. He doesn't do anything. You didn't have the tight end dynamic that you had last year with Leitu, who was a good saving security blanket for Bryce Young when those guys weren't open. You didn't have the elite back that you had a year ago with Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, since why am I blanking on his name? Not Justice Haynes, who came in, was good. He's going to be a good player for
that was the first game I feel like I've seen him really play.
Jace McClellan, which he was okay, but he's just not a world beater. Like, he's not a Derrick Henry. They just didn't. They don't have the dudes, and obviously they had the offensive snap problems, and that center is now in the portal as we record this podcast. But Matt Green, I just looked at it. I was like, defense was fine. They held up their end of the bargain. They gave Michigan all kinds of problems, but this was not an elite Alabama team. They're good. They were solid. They're well coached, but this offense wasn't scary. This offense struggled. The offense came apart at the end when they needed it most. They had some issues, and they just don't have the dudes that typical Alabama dynasty national championship teams have. And I don't know. Maybe they get them next year. Maybe they bounce back, but I don't know. If I'm a Bama fan, look, you've won a lot. It's been great, but I think the better team won on Monday afternoon, and I think Michigan showed a lot. That J.J. McCarthy drive I was texting you during it. It's like the J.J. McCarthy legacy drive was big time. Like, he had so many big time throws in that drive. He made plays when he had to. Wide receivers made plays when they had to. And then, there was some weird stuff at the end, like Harbaugh with the timeout at the one when they could have just gone to overtime to snap it again. You had the crazy punt that kid almost had a disaster where he would have never been allowed back in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
If he, just the game had it all. Like, I love this game. I love the venue. Obviously, the Rose Bowl, it was a great venue for college football. But I just came away. Michigan, I think, is the best team this year. People have felt it. I picked Michigan before the year on this program to win the national title. And it was one of those things you just had to see it. You had to see Michigan finally do it, and they get their first college football playoff win against Nick Saban, and they earned it. I think you talked about it on the pod, Matt. You were like, I don't know if J.J. McCarthy can go out and win this game for Michigan. And I think he deserves credit because J.J. took some shots, but he also, he stepped up big time late in this game.
No, he definitely did. This was a legacy game for him for sure. But like you're saying, like this Alabama team was flawed, right? Like they definitely the defense played great in this game for Michigan, without a doubt. Like, without that muff punt in the first half, like, Alabama's offense really did just about nothing until that final field goal drive. So Alabama's offense really, I came away thinking Georgia's the best team in college football. What are we doing? Like, how did Georgia lose this Alabama team? But yeah, Michigan, without a doubt. Like, I've questioned J.J. McCarthy all season. I still question J.J. McCarthy, to be honest, because we might not see that interception in the stat sheet on the first play of the game, but it happened, and we all saw it. It was a terrible decision to start this game. He gets saved because Caleb Downs' foot is an inch out of bounds before he jumps. But that would have been a backbreaker to start the game. Like, obviously, they plenty of time to bounce back from it. But, the stats look good for sure. A lot of run after the catch. Like, I'm not trying to just pick at JJ McCarthy here. We give the quarterback probably too much blame and too much credit. It was obviously a great game for him, but I mean, I'm still like, he gets into a shootout next week with Michael Penix. Like, my money's still not on JJ McCarthy in that situation.
We'll get into how we think Sunday's going to go, or excuse me, Monday night's going to go on the Sunday night show, but I'm still back and forth on that one. I'm with you. Like, I still am going to probably pick Michigan, but man, picking against Washington has been a foolish thing to do. But I mean, final thing here, Matt Green. I mean, do you think Bama makes it back? They're fine. This doesn't dwell on them. They're just right back. Or do you think this is one of those where you're like, now it's getting even tighter? Have we already seen the last national championship for Nick Saban at Alabama? Just because it's going to get even more complicated with the expanded SEC and now the 12-team playoff.
I'm never going to count Nick Saban out. Like, people could argue and say I've already counted him out because I said the dynasty was dead. It's just because the dynasty was just operating at such a ridiculous level, and that's just no longer the case. They're still one of the best programs in college football every single year and are going to go into just about every single season being one of those 4 or 5 teams that people are picking to win a national championship. So I just can't say that they're never winning another national championship, but I mean, constructed the way they were this year, like, that's why I question Milroe. Like, he did improve, but how much more can this guy improve? Like, I don't know. I do question that, their ability to win a championship with this guy. Is the defense as good next year, losing guys like Dallas Turner? I assume Kool-Aid McKinstry's going pro. Terry and Arnold probably going pro. I haven't seen the guys on their defense yet to this point, but I don't know. We'll see. But, I mean, Alabama's going to be loaded year in and year out. And it's hard to – I'm never going to say that Saban is just – he's not going to win a national championship. I don't know. He can't have that many more years left, but you can't count him out.
No, you can't. But, I mean, it's just going to be hard. I think it's just dynasties are going to be damn near impossible in the 12-team playoff. I think it's just going to be really hard. The dynasty really is just making the playoff every year. Is I think what the new dynasty measuring stick's going to be is like, how many years in a row were you in the college football playoff where you had an opportunity?
Maybe we start to talk about like Final Fours, like like a college basketball. You're in the Final Four every year, like that's elite, and you're giving yourself a chance to win championships. But I don't know. I think in this playoff era, the 12-team playoff, it might benefit the big dogs that have the deepest rosters, because it's like those years like where the kick six happens, or a year like this where Georgia just loses the SEC championship. Like the most talented team in the country, like they weren't perfect and they got bounced, but now you give them a 12-team, you give them that mulligan. Like, you could see a lot of those juggernauts, like Ohio State, like we saw for years under Urban Meyer, like they just don't show up 1 or 2 weeks a year, and it costs them a national championship. Like, but you make it a even playing field at the end of the year, and some of those teams are the most talented teams in college football, and can beat anybody. So I don't know. I don't know if it'll be as crazy or if it'll just be like those top 2 or 3 winning all the time, but we'll see.
We will see, sir. Matt Green, Washington, though, they get a massive win, even though late it looked like Washington might actually blow this. I mean, Texas had 4 shots at the end zone at first and goal, and we're not able to get in. Your guy, A.D. Mitchell, making big plays late, but could not come down with the final one. And it wasn't on A.D. Mitchell. That was a fantastic play by the Washington DB to break that up. Just picture perfect form, sir. But what did you make of Washington taking down Texas in this one? Because I predicted that one would get away from Texas. I thought Michigan and Bama would come down to the wire, but my gut said that Washington was going to pull away a little bit, and they were up double digits in the third quarter, but Texas fought back. They deserve a lot of credit for making this a game late. Teams do not come back from 13 down going into the fourth quarter for a reason. Texas ultimately not able to do it. You just don't want to be in that kind of hole in the college football playoff and going into the fourth quarter. But what did you make of Texas going down to Washington in the Sugar Bowl, Matt Green?
Yeah, Adonai Mitchell with kept the touchdown playoff streak going. So he scored a touchdown in all 5 playoff games he played in, but can't get that third straight national title. But yeah, this was absolutely insane there at the end. It felt like Washington really, and that's why I told you, like, as much as Texas felt like the better team, I couldn't get this out of my head that like they feel just like Oregon. They feel like the same team as Oregon. And on paper, we all think Oregon is better than Washington, but Washington just beat Oregon twice. And I wish I would have looked up how many games Washington wasn't favored in this year. It wasn't many, but every time they were doubted, they've shown that they're legit. And Michael Penix Jr., like, his legacy is just off the charts. Like, I mean, I was questioning Michael Penix Jr. down the stretch. Like, I think Roma Dunze should have been a Heisman finalist over him. But this was his Vince Young, his Deshaun Watson potential moment of like, okay, he might not be the Heisman winner that season, but he's the guy that everyone remembers for that college football season. And he's got the potential to do that. Throwing for 400 yards in the semifinals. Like, I mean, these receivers, like, by themselves are just mismatches. But if you're going to put a perfect ball, like, it's like they didn't even have to have the elite receiver advantage. He just put it right, like, on top of everybody. Like, he was just making perfect throws the whole game. And Texas didn't have much of an answer. And they controlled the clock, which was really the blueprint for when they beat Oregon in the Pac-12 championship.
I just am so impressed by Michael Penix. Like, he's just, I saw someone who did like a, I don't know how they do it, but they were able to edit the footage and make him right-handed and what it looks like if he were throwing these darts right-handed. And it looks almost identical to Phillip Rivers. Like, all of his stuff just looks like prime Phillip Rivers. And it's just kind of funny to think like how much our perception's skewed just because he's a lefty.
Can't not think he's Tua while watching him play. Like, he looks just like him.
But guess what? They didn't trail by 8+ in this game, Matt Green. They keep that streak alive. Washington just doesn't do the dumb stuff. They don't get themselves in a hole. They were protected. Michael Penix, well, I don't think Michael Penix was sacked in this game. He doesn't throw a pick. He is just good. And people were worried about the Washington front versus the Texas defensive line. Texas defensive line was good, especially the interior, but it just didn't matter. Like, Penix was just on the money when he needed to. And also, what I was most worried about with Texas was, like, I think these NFL receivers with Polk, McMillan, and Adunze, I just don't think Texas has the horses out in the secondary to keep up with these guys. These are all 3 NFL guys. And it just, they're not 2019 LSU with Jamar Chase and company, but they are good. And this is an elite offense that's just really, really hard to stop. And it's just, hats off to Washington because they know what they are. They know how they're going to attack you, and they're just going to keep doing it. And most teams are not going to be able to stop them because they just don't have the dudes to do it.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I threw out that diet 2019 LSU after a couple games this season. These receivers are legit, but you're exactly right. I mean, they could not guard these guys. And even with all that, Texas did have a chance to win this game at the end. And I was with how it ended, I was honestly shocked that Texas did not pull this thing out. Like, yeah. And especially for Dylan Johnson to get hurt on what really should have been almost the final play of the game. Like, I don't know why they didn't knee the ball 3 times, maybe even do like the run around for 3 or 4 seconds and knee it 3 times. Like, there should have been about 10, 15 seconds. I think I was trying to do the math in my head, but when he gets hurt on 3rd down and the clock stops, like, also, so the clock doesn't keep going even though he's injured. Like, that's what I don't understand either. Like, it's a running play. He's down. I didn't understand why the clock stops there. But then you got the kick catch interference. So they're starting that drive on the 30. Like, it was just, oh man, everything going wrong. And I don't know if it didn't look like Dylan Johnson's going to play. I don't want to speculate about injuries, but the way he walked off the field, that doesn't look like a guy.
And he's had injury problems at different points this year too. Like, it's going to be, you don't get another month off to get right like you just got for this one. Like, it's next week. It sucks.
And that's
I hope
such a
he's
bummer.
playing.
playing against such a physical team like Michigan to not have the workhorse. And we literally talked about coming into this game how Texas, even after blanking on the running back's name, right? Jonathan Brooks got hurt. They still had a bunch of guys that were able to, be really productive. So Washington, it was all Dylan Johnson on the ground. So hopefully he can play, but I'm not optimistic. But yeah, the way they were, Washington was able to close this out. Like, man, it felt like that 2012 SEC championship, Georgia, Alabama. They actually got the 4 shots from the end zone. They didn't throw it one time and then the clock ran out on them. They got the 4 shots from the 12-yard line. And with these Texas receivers, I'm honestly shocked that they didn't find a way to get in the end zone. Like, I'm not going to call out Steve Sarkisian. It's like, things happen. It's plays happen here and there. But
we can call him out for one. The first play was insane. That check down to the right, that just throw to the right was insane.
And being like an offensive guru type of coach, like you don't have the play like from the 12-yard line to get your team to the national championship, like something that you're like, this is the play. We got dudes at receiver. Like, I don't know. It just, you throw up the fade, you throw, like you're talking about the one in the flat, like, like you should have taken 4 shots to the end zone. And I don't know, maybe you don't have enough
I would have just gone to
AD
AD Mitchell 4 times in a row. Like that same move, honestly. 4 times in a row.
Yeah. And he had single coverage, I think, every play too. So yeah, I don't know. It just, you got to be frustrated with the offensive coach, like to not have something better in that situation.
I ask you here as we wrap up here, Matt Green. Quinn Ewers proved a lot to me. I think Quinn was good. I was interested to see the reaction to that. I was like, Quinn was fine. He wasn't the issue. And I think Quinn played really well in this game. And I'm very curious how this offseason goes with Texas, because I'm sure there's some Texas fans who are like, Quinn, thank you for the time, but we are ready to, like, Arch is here. Like, is Arch and the Manning family okay sitting another year if Quinn decides to come back? Like, I am very curious how this goes for Texas this offseason, because I think you can make the case because they're bringing a lot back and they're right there, obviously, in the blue chip ratio, and they're coming to the SEC. You kind of want to have the continuity of Quinn coming over to make things a little bit easier, but also, is that realistic with Arch and everything else? I don't know. Like, they're in a weird spot, but also if he didn't go to Ohio State out of the gate, do you know where he'd be great for a 1-year just transfer? Ohio State. Like it's just, it kind of sucks that he burned that weird senior year where he comes early, because I'm like, Quinn Ewers.
You think about this year. Like, I think Ohio State could have used Quinn Ewers this year as well.
Oh, 100%.
Won the national championship. That's basically what they were missing. So I don't know. I don't think you can worry about Arch Manning at all, to be honest. I think Quinn Ewers has the potential to be the number 1 pick in the 2025 draft, honestly. Like, I think he's right there. Like, I think Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, like, they are like probably the 2 best quarterbacks coming into next season. I mean, who are the
Shador Sanders will be in that mix.
Shador Sanders.
JJ McCarthy, we'll see how he does if he comes back.
I don't put him in the.
I wouldn't either, but I'm just saying he's back. I don't know.
But yeah, in terms of the contenders, I mean, he's definitely back, right? He's not going pro. I don't think JJ McCarthy's going pro, right?
It depends.
Everyone else seems to think he's better than I do. But I don't know. So I think Quinn Ewers is one of the better quarterbacks, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So yeah, if Arch Manning isn't cool sitting for 2 years, I don't know. Arch Manning, he's got his own aspirations, but this is the richest backup quarterback we've ever heard of, especially in college. Like, this man's going to do the Matt Leinart, Chase Daniel thing just straight out of high school.
Well, it's also like you only need 2 years of tape. So if he sat another year, Texas goes on a deeper run. He gets to continue learning, sitting, waiting, that kind of thing, getting better.
And you don't need to. I mean, there's plenty of guys that Trubisky, Mark Sanchez, like we've seen guys go top 5.
I just don't feel like the Manning family wants him to be a one and done, like one college football season, then go pro. That doesn't feel like a Manning thing to me.
I mean, those are both like 4-year starters, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I have my doubts about that one.
Yeah, you could be right. I don't know. He's still got time. He's still got plenty of eligibility. The
point is, it's an interesting offseason ahead in Austin, because I could see it going either way there. I'm very curious to see what happens.
I also think, like I was talking about FSU earlier, like this kind of being a perfect storm for them. Like, I think Texas was in a little bit of a perfect storm season this year. Like, it's going to be a lot harder to get to the college football playoff going through this new 16-team SEC. Like, there's some gauntlets. Like, your schedule was undoubtedly easier in 2023 than it's going to be for the foreseeable future. And if they had the cachet of being a national champion coming into the SEC, they could start to recruit. Like, not that Texas isn't recruiting like a big-time program, but even take that to the next level. Like, this could be as close as Texas gets for the next few years. Like, the SEC is it's a little bit different than the Big 12.
Oh no, I don't disagree. But I also, Bobby Bowden talked about that with the ACC years ago.
Yeah, that's why they ultimately made because they were independent, like in like the 80s and everything, right?
Well, he talked about SEC and ACC, like him taking an SEC job and like winning a title. And I want to get this quote because it speaks to what you're saying. Because he talked about it just being too tough to win, and he was right because he won a national title at.
Well, and that's what I've always said too. That like,
okay, here it is.
Urban
I got the
Meyer
quote for you.
Ohio State. It's like those programs that can get SEC players that don't have to play SEC teams. Like, that's the ideal situation.
So they joined the ACC in 1992. Florida State did. He said on the Paul Feinbaum show in 2015, Bobby Bowden said, quote, "I felt that it was too difficult to win through the SEC to win a national championship. I felt like our best route would be to go through the ACC, and that did prove out to be correct. But I don't know if we could have made it through the SEC." I mean, that's it. Like, he's right, and it worked out for him in a big way. Like, Dabo paid off from that.
And in the 90s, the SEC wasn't just like head and shoulders better than everyone either. Like, this run in the 2000s, like 20 teens, like that's when they started to separate themselves. But he was even saying that back then.
And I'm not saying that's a shot. I'm saying that's smart. Like, Bobby was smart, and he won titles that way. And because, like, look, man, everyone's like, what's your strength schedule? You know what's cool? Just winning championships. You know who wasn't complaining? Clemson fans of like, oh, this ACC schedule. You know what they enjoyed? Winning national titles in like 7 years of elite quarterback play. And they won a bunch of games. That's nice. Like, that's really what people want. And if Michigan wins a title, guess who doesn't care that like 10 of their regular season games were just sleepers and didn't matter? Because guess what? They ended up winning a national title anyway. The SEC is just going to be a bloodbath.
With the way they were recruiting in the 90s, I got to think FSU still could have won a couple titles in the SEC. But
maybe. Bowden didn't want to go down that road, and I don't blame him.
I think they'd like to be in the SEC right now. That's for sure. They don't seem too happy in the Atlantic Coast Conference. We'll see how much longer that relationship lasts.
This is true, Matt Green. Well, that is all we've got here. We'll be back on Sunday night to do our national championship preview, our last college football game of the 2023-2024 college football season. Matt Green, don't forget, check out chasethomaspodcast.com for all of the full episodes, links, all that good stuff. Check out there. If you like this on YouTube and watch us on YouTube, make sure you like this video, leave a comment, all that good stuff. youtube.com/chasethomaspodcast. Like and subscribe. Email us, chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com, and all that good stuff. But did you have something else, Matt, before we wrap up?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I had a conversation with Tori on like keeping the flag outside. It's like, okay, technically Georgia's season is over, but still got a couple more days till college football season is officially over. Right? I'm gonna keep the flag out for a few more days. I'm in denial that college football season is over.
Do you know who doesn't have to worry about taking down their Tennessee flag in front of their house? Everything School HQ, because basketball season's here. Baseball season's around the corner. Everything School HQ. Matt Green, thank you as always, sir. Enjoy the hibernation.
I hate that I said anything.
You did that to yourself. You have no one to blame but yourself for that one. I can't believe you just tossed that one up right for me. Matt Green, always a pleasure. I'll talk to you very soon.